The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in the public service nation building series, The Law and You. This is program number 933. Coming to you on Monday, the 8th of April, 2019. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic, registration of deeds. But before I get into the topic, a few preliminary comments. Firstly, and as usual, I would like to send out condolences to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And in that connection, I must send special condolences to two families in particular. First, the Cruikshank family of Green Hill and elsewhere, who will be burying their mum, Aunt May Cruikshank, Tanti May, Mother May, next week Sunday in Barley, all my cousins, and also the family of the Joseph family of Murray Village, and particular reference to Bernard Joseph. He is my ex-brother-in-law, having been married to my sister, Santo. I am sorry that I could not be attending the funeral because as I speak, as I'm recording this program, the service is being held, the funeral service is being held at St. George's Cathedral. But Santo and the other members of the Joseph family have my deepest condolences. Well, The Law and You is almost 22 years old. Next week, Monday, DV, we'll be observing 22 completed years of this program being on the air. And when you think that somebody who was born in 1997 when the program started would be 22 years old by now, or almost. I wonder, at least when the time comes, next week I will give my thanks to SVG-TV, but I can't thank SVG-TV enough for having taken over the program when my finances had practically run out and carrying it as a public service. And I hope I will be able to carry on the program for as long as the Lord gives me health and strength. It is always a pleasure to come up to Dorsetshire Hill to do this program as I do on Monday afternoons, so that you could hear it on Monday nights, just after encounter and just before your wrestling. Okay, registration of deeds. Suppose you have a title deed for your property and someone steals your deed. And that happens every now and then. Usually a member of the family. A brother might hunt and find his parents' deed and take it, thinking that if he has the deed, he will end up with the property when the parents die. Well, you shouldn't worry at all if you lose your deed. You shouldn't worry if it gets burned accidentally, if there is a flooding in the house and your papers get all flooded out. If you lose it, it doesn't matter. Why? Because what you have in your possession and call a deed is merely a copy of the deed. The deed, which is the only one that really matters, is the original deed lodged at the courthouse. That is your deed. And if anything goes wrong with that, well, then you're in trouble. But the law allows anybody to go to the courthouse, pay a small search fee, search for anybody else's deed, pay a small charge to have it copied and certified, and anybody can get a copy of anybody else's deed from the courthouse. Because deeds are among documents which are called public documents. Public documents which are registrable, that is, which are able to be registered, but not only that, which must be registered. You see, if you have a deed and it's not registered, it's not a deed, no matter how long you have it. And there are many documents that the law requires them to be registered in order for them to have full force and effect. And in particular, you cannot tender in court as evidence an unregistered document unless the judge gives you permission. And there are several kinds of deeds. There are deeds of gift, where a property has been given by one party to another party, or by two or more parties who own it to two or more parties who receive it, as when two parents give property, whether land, a house and land, to several children. There are deeds of conveyance, when property is bought and sold, and the title to the property is conveyed. That is handed from one person to another, from the purchaser, from the vendor who sells it, conveyed, given to the purchaser who purchased it. There are mortgage deeds. When you borrow money from a bank or credit union or other financial institution on the security of property, you have to sign a document promising to pay back the money and saying that if you don't pay back the money, you're liable to lose the property which you have put up as security for the loan. And then there are all sorts of deeds. Deeds of disclaimer, and so on. So a deed is really a document which provides evidence of a transaction taking place involving real property. I say real property because you don't use deeds when you sell a vehicle. But you need a deed when you sell land, property. That document must be registered, but when you sell a vehicle, you go to the license office and you sign a change of ownership, and that's it. Therefore, a deed must be in writing, because once it's a document is defined as a paper writing showing certain things, and when you read the document, you will get the contents of the document, you'll see what it's all about. So that if you are buying a property, buying a piece of land, either from a private person or from a bank or from the Lands and Surveys Department. Or you make the arrangement, you agree on the price and so on. You go and you pay your money, and the document is signed by the party selling the land to you. You don't, when you are buying property, you don't have to sign the deed. If you have a deed of exchange, well then both parties, the deed of exchange is where one person exchanges a property with another person. And they sign, both of them have to sign that. But if it's, say, a conveyance or a deed of gift, only the person giving the property or transferring it is compelled to sign, unless the person who is receiving it has made certain promises and intends to be bound by them. Then he will have to sign the document, he or she. Well, I don't want to keep on saying he or she. When I say he, no disrespect to the feminine gender. All right, so generally, you're buying property, the vendor or the person selling signs the deed. And it's taken to the courthouse. Well, it goes to the valuation office, of course, and that's a different topic in itself. And when all the formalities are completed, it's registered at the courthouse. The original is left at the courthouse. And I must let you know, a deed cannot be written on ordinary paper. It has to be written on paper called deed paper, which is a stiffer sort of paper than the ordinary paper you will get. And the law requires certain formalities for a deed. You have to have so many inches for the margin, the top margin, the bottom margin, and the side margins, and so on. Right? Various formalities have to be fulfilled, but let us assume the document is taken to the courthouse. The stamp duty, if any, is paid. The registration charges are paid, and registration charges are always payable on the registration of any document. Unless it's a government transaction. Government transactions are not required to pay registration fees because government doesn't pay itself, as it were. So the deed is registered at the courthouse. How do you know it's registered? Well, that has to be written on the deed. Now, if you look at the back of any copy of a deed, copy that you get from the courthouse, I'll come to that because there are two kinds of copies. You can get a copy from the lawyer's office or a copy from the courthouse. All right, if you get a copy from the courthouse, it will say on the back of the deed, this document consisting of so many pages was registered at such a time, and the time of registration must be put on the deed. And I'll tell you why in a moment. On such and such a date. And it is stamped by an official at the registry with the stamp carrying the name of the registrar of the High Court. And it is given a number. That is extremely important. Every registered document gets a number when it is registered, and normally that number will be written at the top and the front, very boldly. And the numbering is simple. Registered documents are registered in their categories from the first day of the year, the first working day, which is normally the 2nd of January, because the 1st of January, as we all know, is always a holiday. And the first document of its class to be registered, and when I say of its class, I mean document having to do with real property. That is what we're speaking about. Okay? And it gets a number. The first document that goes to the courthouse to be registered on the first working day of the year gets a number 1. And there's a slash and the year is written. So that becomes, if it is this year, it becomes document number 1 of 2019. The next document that comes to be registered gets number 2. And so as documents come, they get the number 3, 4, 5, 6. And at the end of every year, there are usually several thousand documents registered. So you may get a document marked number 3278 of 2018. The reason for that is that documents, because they carry the number, it is easy to see which document was registered before which. Suppose you have a fellow who is a scamp, a con man, and he decides to sell the same piece of land to 2 different people without their knowledge. Arranges, I will sell you this and so on, and takes money from both parties and signs their deed at different times, of course. And then both people have paid for this piece of land. They might have paid the same amount. When the fraud is discovered, question arises, to whom does the land belong of those 2 people who are both conned by the conman, who signed deeds for them? Well, the land would belong to the person whose deed was registered first. Suppose the 2 people who are conned go to the courthouse the same day. One gets his deed registered 5 minutes before the other one. When a controversy arises as to who is the real owner, whose deed takes precedent over whose, the one who registers his deed first, the law regards him as getting the land. The other one has a claim for the return of his money from the person who committed the fraud in the first place. So that the time of registration is critical, and the time of registration coincides with the number that the deed gets. Because a deed registered at 9 o'clock in the morning gets a number. One registered at 9:05 gets a higher number than the one registered before. So the one registered before is number 17 of 20, whatever. The next one to be registered is 18. So, just like when you get twins being born, the mother will tell you, even though the children were born at the same day and time, one would have been born before the other, because twins can't be born at the identical time. They might be identical twins, but one comes out of the womb before the other one. And the mother will be able to tell you which one of those 2 twins is the older one, because that one was born first. Same with deeds. If deeds are registered, the first one to be registered gets priority. That is the older deed, even though the other one was registered the same day. So that a deed with an older registration number will take priority in case of a dispute over a deed with a younger number or lesser number, or a higher number, I should say, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the deed with number 1 is older than the deed with number 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Very important. Now, when the deeds are registered and get their number, the original deeds are kept at the registry. Number 1 right up to whatever 1,000. And at the end of the year, all the deeds are taken to the government printery and they are bound, because before they are bound, they are loose, but they're in order. But they are bound into a volume of the deeds for that year. Well, some years, because there's so many deeds registered, you have volume 1, volume 2. I don't know if there's in volume 3, but. And that thick volume for a particular year, or those volumes of deeds for that year, become extremely important documents. You can't afford to get them lost. Or heaven forbid, you can't afford to get them burnt. Because that becomes the authentic evidence of rights in the land to which the deeds refer. And as I told you before, every other deed is a copy of what is there. So that the one the lawyer gives to you when you buy property, or parents give you a deed to give, or brother gives you a deed to give, you have that. It is important, yes. You safeguard it, yes. If you go to a bank for a loan, you carry it with you. But the bank lawyer doesn't even look at that, because the bank's lawyer isn't interested too much in the piece of paper you bring and call a deed. He is interested in what is at the courthouse in the bound registers. Because the lawyer now, when he is tasked to advise whether a bank or a potential purchaser on whether a deed is good or not, the lawyer has to carry out a search at the registry. It's a two-way search. He searches from the date your deed was registered up to the time when he is called upon to give advice. That is, he doesn't go personally, unless it's a special case. He sends his clerk. And the clerk searches the registers to see if, since you registered that deed, you signed any other deed affecting that land. And how you know which land? Because the land has to be described in the deed. So the lawyer's clerk would be able to tell the lawyer, well, that deed is clean. I didn't find any encumbrance. Or, yes, in 19 so-and-so, the person in whose name that deed is registered went and sold it, or sold part of it, or gave it away, or mortgaged it. The history of that land is recorded at the registry. Now, the lawyer's clerk searches not only what happens after the deed, in which case the lawyer is looking to see if you, the person who bought the property and whose deed it is, if you had done anything to affect your title to it. The lawyer's clerk also have to look back to see if the person who sold you the land or who gave it to you really had the legal ability to do that. In other words, to see if the land was really theirs. So a search takes place from the date your deed is registered onwards to see if the person who holds the deed did anything to affect his interest in that property. And then the search goes back to see if the person who sold or gave you the land had the proper authority to do that. Now, go back how far? Well, the conventional wisdom, that is, when lawyers are trained, we are told you have to search back for 60 years before the deed is registered. The 60 years is not compulsory, but that is a benchmark, the norm. Now, because our deeds are not yet fully computerized, and they have started a project to record that information on a computer, searching at the registry of a deed is a tedious process. It's painstaking, and it's done by hand. The lawyer's clerk has to go through the books, the bond volumes. So if you're searching now in 2019, you go back to 2018, 2017, and you go back year by year, turning the pages of the alphabet, if the person is C. Campbell, looking for Campbell, or any seal under the C part of the volume. Year by year. No. The older the deed, the longer that search takes. That is why when you go to a lawyer and say you've come to get a deed, the lawyer has to search the title deed of the person you are getting the land from, so as to be able to advise you that yes, it is okay. But a bank lawyer who gets your deed, which has already been registered, has to search back and forth. The lawyer who is doing your deed for you originally just had to search back because there's nothing forward for him to sign. But he has to search your deed, or the person who's selling you the land. The lawyer has to search and see if they are really in a position to sign the deed for you. So searching is very, very important. And the process takes time. So that is why you go to a lawyer and you're told, well, you have to wait because the search is going on. Some people get impatient, but the lawyer has to do his or her job properly. The registration process in St. Vincent is slow and tedious because we do, and this is the final point, I probably should continue this program next week. The final point, we do not have registered conveyancing. In other words, we do not have the system they have in most other Caribbean territories, where you get a certificate of title and you have a registration system based on what is called a Torrens registration system, where all transactions affecting a piece of land are recorded in a book. And in about half an hour, if so much, you can see the history of a piece of land in one book by looking at the registration title for that deed. We don't have that here. So in our case in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you have to search year by year by year until we get the whole data properly computerized. Then a computer will be able to tell you in a matter of seconds if there are any encumbrances on the land, that is, anything that would stop the person from being able to sell it or give it away. And then when the clerk is finished searching at the registry, the clerk has to go to another place in the registry and look at the cause book. What is the cause book? That is the book with all high court cases, to see if there is any judgment affecting you. Whether the judgment affecting the land doesn't matter, to see if you owe anybody any outstanding money on a judgment, because the law is that if you owe money in the High Court on a High Court judgment, that debt is an automatic encumbrance on any property you have. In other words, any property you have can be seized once it isn't mortgaged to a bank and so on, can be taken by due process if you are refusing or unable to pay a debt you owe in a high court case, in what is called a money judgment. Then, when the lawyer's clerk is finished searching the books of the registry, the deed registered, and the cause book, a search has to be carried out at the land tax office to see if there are any outstanding taxes owing on that parcel of land. All of these things have to be done in order for you to have a good, solid deed. And why is it important? Well, if your deed isn't solid, if it is affected by encumbrance or any other imperfection, no bank, no credit union, no insurance company would lend you money on the security of that deed, because their lawyer will say that deed is not good. Very intricate, very complex, but very necessary. I will continue the topic, but there are some other aspects, there are things I wanted to get back to, but the time has expired. And there are things I said I would come back to and I didn't. So next week, DB, I will finish this important topic. This is not to say you mustn't take care of your deed, you know, but just that if it becomes lost or damaged or destroyed or somebody steals it, don't dig horrors. You can always get a replacement copy at the registry, because what is important is what information is registered there affecting that parcel of land. And nobody can go and fiddle with what is at the registry. All right? All right, well, that is all from this program of The Law and You, program number 933. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DB, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, which is now almost 22 years old, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC, and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.